Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
We bought the house 6 years ago, and at the time it felt like hitting a jackpot. The open house had been crowded, the air smelled of fresh paint and carpet cleaner, and everyone else was buzzing about square footage and kitchen layouts. I was focused on one thing: no HOA, no rules about paint colors, no weekly inspections, no neighbors telling me what I could plant. It was freedom. Moving in was exhausting but thrilling. Boxes everywhere, the lawn needing work and the little garden in the back waiting for seeds. I wandered around the empty lot next to ours and felt a flicker of satisfaction. We had a little space. We weren't just buying a house, we were buying breathing room. It didn't take long, though, before the first oddities appeared. At the closing, the seller mentioned something about a builder that had backed out. A handful of houses that weren't part of the HOA. At the time, it seemed like a minor detail. Exempt houses sounded perfect. We had all the freedom, none of the headaches. Or so I thought. By the time the neighborhood was finished, the HOA had been turned over to a management company. Names started popping up in the local Facebook group. Board members introducing themselves, welcoming everyone. Polite posts about landscaping, pool rules, and annual dues. For a few months it was background noise. Then the old man appeared. I started noticing his posts immediately. Angry, long-winded rants about violations, fees, and the neighborhood falling apart. He hated the HOA, and yet he wanted the exempt houses to join. It didn't make sense. He'd post pictures of perfectly fine driveways, trimmed lawns, even garage doors, and rat about standards. I laughed the first time I saw a post targeting our house, a picture of our side yard, captioned with some vague comment about lazy maintenance. I shrugged it off. Maybe it was just his personality. Then the comments started. Other neighbors chimed in, agreeing, offering tips, or worse, passive-aggressive compliments. I deleted the notification before anyone noticed. It didn't feel like a big deal yet. But the next day another post appeared, a close-up of our mailbox with text under it. Could use some attention. Not sure why this house thinks it's exempt, it was pointed. It wasn't just commentary anymore. I could feel my stomach tighten, a cold realization creeping in. They were watching. I went outside and glanced down the street. The old man's house was at the end of the block, an aging two-story with peeling paint and wind chime clutter. He sat on the porch staring. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe not. I didn't know anyone in the neighborhood at first. A few people waved, polite smiles, nods across the street. None of them were on our side, I could tell. They had long been members of the HOA. I wasn't sure if anyone outside the board understood how strange it felt to be singled out like this. The first real interaction happened when I saw a note on our front door, typed, clipped to the frame with a thumbtack: "Please maintain your lawn according to neighborhood standards. HOA expectations apply even to exempt houses." I laughed nervously. HOA expectations don't apply to us, I reminded myself. But the message had teeth. It wasn't just commentary anymore. Later that evening, I peeked at the Facebook group again. Another photo. This time the old man had zoomed in on our backyard fence, highlighting a single crooked plank. "Imagine living here thinking rules don't matter," he wrote. There were 20 comments underneath, some mocking, some scolding. Emily noticed my frown. "What's wrong?" she asked, brushing crumbs from the counter. I waved it off. "Nothing, just an old man being cranky." She didn't seem convinced, but didn't push. I started walking around the yard, inspecting every edge, every board, every flower bed. Nothing looked out of place. Everything was fine, yet somehow it wasn't. The feeling of being watched, measured, judged was creeping in. By the next morning it had escalated again. Another notification on Facebook, this one with a sharp tone: "We will be reviewing all exempt homes soon. Consider this your first warning." I clicked, expecting a general announcement, but it was tagged. "Our house, right there," called out. My hands went cold. I sat on the porch staring at the street. Across from us, the old man's eyes were visible behind his glasses, tracking. Other neighbors peeked from windows, a few nodding, a few smirking. It felt orchestrated. I took a deep breath. It was early yet. Maybe it wouldn't get worse. Maybe he was just an old crank with too much time. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe everything would stay quiet. Then I saw something on the edge of the notification that made me freeze. Another post, this one different. It wasn't about the lawn, or the fence, or anything visible. This one mentioned the exempt properties in a way that suggested they were being watched constantly. They were mapping, tracking, noting every step we took, every improvement. I closed the laptop, my heart racing. The front door clicked behind me. I turned. Nobody was there. But a folded piece of paper sat on the porch step. The handwriting was neat, almost friendly. "We are watching. You will comply." I froze. The first day of freedom was over, and I realized we might never actually be free. The next morning I tried to act normal. Breakfast, coffee, checking emails. I didn't touch Facebook. I told myself ignoring it was the smartest move. But ignoring it didn't stop the notices. By mid-morning there was a letter slipped under the front door. Thick envelope, embossed HOA logo. Though we weren't technically members, inside it outlined a fine for exterior clutter and improper lighting. I blinked at it. Exterior clutter? I had a hose coiled neatly by the side of the house. And the lighting, a single motion sensor lamp. I reread the letter. Immediate compliance required. Failure to correct may result in daily fines of $75. I crumpled it and tossed it on the counter. This was harassment, plain and simple. Then came the neighbors. Tom and Janet from across the street started appearing at odd times. They weren't outright confrontational yet, just hovering near the driveway, lingering a little too long when we took out the trash. Sometimes I'd see them through the blinds, arms crossed, frowning at nothing. I wanted to tell Emily I was imagining it, but she saw it too. "Are they staring at us again?" she asked one morning while I watered the garden. "They're always staring," I muttered. "I don't know why." The next week a new letter arrived. Another fine, this one for unauthorized landscape alterations. Our little flower bed in the front yard was cited as evidence. Photos were attached, every petal, every stone, every mulch line meticulously documented. I checked the flower bed. Nothing had changed. They were inventing violations. I called the management company. A woman named Laura answered. Polite at first, but she quickly regurgitated board policy like a script. Even exempt houses are expected to follow neighborhood aesthetics. "Excuse me," I said. "We're exempt. You can't do this." Her tone shifted. "We are simply enforcing standards consistently. This is your first formal warning." I hung up, feeling a tight knot in my chest. First formal warning. There had been several informal warnings already on Facebook. They weren't just watching, they were orchestrating this. Then came the social media posts. The old man had uploaded close-ups of our siding, highlighting a slightly chipped corner. Comments poured in, some cruel, some mockingly helpful. "Maybe you should repaint before it falls off," one neighbor wrote. Another posted, "Can't wait to see what they do next." It wasn't just about the house, it was about control. Emily tried to calm me. "Maybe we should just ignore them." I shook my head. Ignoring it wasn't an option. They were gaining momentum, turning neighbors against us, creating a network of eyes everywhere. I felt trapped in my own home. The tension escalated further when I saw Megan across the street. She waved and then shook her head subtly, warning me. Later, she explained over coffee that she'd noticed similar harassment. "It's like they're punishing anyone who isn't part of the HOA," she said. "And the old man, he's running it all through the board now." That night, I checked the mailbox. Another notice. This one was typed on bright yellow paper, bold letters. "Unauthorized structures in backyard. Remove or face escalating fines." Structures? The only thing back there was a small tool shed that had been there when we bought the house. I snapped a photo of it, measured it, checked our closing documents. Nothing illegal. Yet another fine. Another opportunity for the HOA to dig deeper. I tried reasoning with a neighbor online. "We're exempt," I typed. "This isn't legal." The comments came fast. "Exempt or not, everyone follows the same rules," someone wrote. "You just think you're special," the old man chimed in, quoting our address. "We can't let anyone break standards. No one is above the rules." I closed the laptop, my hands trembling slightly. This was no longer about garden beds or paint chips. They were trying to prove something. Power, control, maybe personal satisfaction. The week ended with a sudden escalation. I pulled into the driveway after work to find another neighbor, a man I barely knew named Greg, taking photos of our front lawn. I stopped the car. What are you doing?" I asked. Greg looked startled. "Just documenting neighborhood compliance," he said with a shrug, smiling like it was normal. I wanted to yell, to shove the camera away, but he walked off, muttering to himself, disappearing around the corner. Emily watched from the kitchen window, biting her lip. "They're everywhere," she said quietly. By Friday, the letters and posts were non-stop. Every detail, every inch of the house scrutinized. And then the email arrived, subject line flashing like a warning. "Final notice before board action." I opened it, my stomach dropping. It outlined a fine schedule, escalating weekly, threatening legal action if noncompliance continued. I stared at the screen, imagining envelopes piling up, notices taped to the door, neighbors taking turns watching the yard. My home felt like a cage, the streets empty yet crowded with eyes. I went outside to take a deep breath, hoping the air would help me think. I stepped onto the porch. Across the street, a figure emerged from the shadows. The old man. He wasn't waving, wasn't talking, just standing there, staring, hands folded over his chest. I froze. A new thought hit me like a punch. If he could manipulate neighbors, online posts, and management actions, what would he do next? And more importantly, How far was he willing to go? The front door clicked behind me. I turned. Nobody was there. But on the step, just where my feet would touch first thing in the morning, sat another envelope. No stamp, no return address, just bold typed letters. We are watching. Compliance is not optional. And this time I realized it wasn't just about rules. It was personal. By the start of the next week, things were getting worse. It wasn't just letters and Facebook posts anymore. I noticed shadows in the yard, glimpses of someone moving behind our fence. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then I saw a figure crouched near the corner of the property, camera in hand. I ran outside, but the street was empty. Whoever it was had vanished. Emily was worried. I saw someone too, she said one night, her voice low. They were near the driveway. I didn't have an answer for her. I didn't even know if calling the police would help. There was nothing illegal about taking pictures from public property, but it was the way they moved, like they were tracking us. The notices kept arriving, each more absurd than the last. Unauthorized storage of outdoor furniture, incorrect shadow coverage on east-facing windows, improper alignment of garden stones. I laughed nervously at the last one. Stones? There were hundreds in the garden, perfectly arranged. I'd measured them months ago. Neighbors started getting involved in ways I couldn't ignore. Greg, the man from across the street, knocked on the door one evening. "Hey, just checking compliance," he said casually, as if we were in some inspection video. "Board wants to make sure exempt houses follow guidelines." I told him to leave. He smiled too easily and left. Emily shut the door behind him, her hands shaking. "They're everywhere," she muttered. Megan came over that afternoon. She lived a few houses down, also exempt from the HOA. She was quieter, more cautious than the rest. "They're testing you," she said, looking around. "Every move, every change. They want a reaction." I wanted to laugh, but the tension was building. She was right. It wasn't about rules. It was about control. One night I heard a car slowly rolling past our driveway. I peeked through the blinds. A truck with tinted windows paused, then drove off. My chest tightened. I had no idea who was inside, but it felt deliberate. Every noise in the neighborhood started to make me nervous. Footsteps, doors closing, distant voices. Everything was amplified. Then there was the notice on the porch. Another fine. This one said, "Unauthorized use of property for recreation." Apparently, having a small swing set in the backyard counted. I stared at it for a long time, disbelief and frustration mixing. A swing set was illegal now. The harassment started seeping into everyday life. I began checking every corner of the house, measuring, photographing, making sure nothing could be accused of being out of place. Emily caught me pacing one evening. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just making sure everything's fine." I wasn't fine, not even close. It got worse when a small group of neighbors started appearing outside, unannounced, sometimes just standing in driveways, other times talking quietly among themselves while staring in our direction. I could feel eyes on me no matter where I went. I tried documenting everything, hoping that evidence would protect me if it came to court. Photos, timestamps, copies of letters, screenshots of Facebook posts, everything. But even that felt futile. Every small victory in pushing back led to retaliation. Then one afternoon, something crossed the line. Emily came inside holding a folded paper she had found on the back step. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Bold letters read, "We are watching. Property must comply." It was a clear threat. I crumpled the paper in my hand. How did they know we were home? How long had it been there? Every instinct screamed that this was no longer about rules or guidelines. The final blow that week came in the form of a late-night call. A neighbor's voice, sharp and quiet. "You're pushing your luck," they said. "Don't think this ends quietly." I hung up. My hands shook, my mind raced. Everything was escalating, moving faster than I could handle. By Sunday, I couldn't even step outside without scanning the street. Cars stopped randomly. Neighbors peered from windows and shadows moved behind hedges. I realized I was no longer living in a neighborhood. I was living in a trap, every inch of property under surveillance, every small act measured. And then, just when I thought I could take a breath, I noticed it, a small envelope tucked behind the gatepost. I didn't touch it. My heart was racing too fast. I could see the faint typed letters through the envelope. "Next steps will be costly." I froze. For the first time, it felt like they were not just following rules, they were writing them as they went. Every move we made, every step we took was being judged. And they were ready to strike. By the time the next week began, the neighborhood didn't feel like a place to live anymore. It felt like a game being played around us, and we were losing. The envelopes came daily now, sometimes 2 at a time, slipped into the doorframe or left under the doormat. Each one said the same thing in different ways. "Comply or pay." Emily stopped opening them. She'd just stacked them on the counter like junk mail. I couldn't ignore them. Every letter felt like an accusation, each fine more creative than the last. They cited violations that didn't even exist. Unauthorized wind obstruction, one read. Another accused us of failure to maintain decorative consistency. I laughed out loud at that one, until I realized it wasn't a joke. I called the management company again, demanding to speak to someone in charge. Laura answered, calm and detached. "I've reviewed your property's record," she said, voice smooth and cold. "Multiple violations remain unresolved. We're not part of your HOA, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice level. "You have no authority here. You're in the community," she replied. "Community expectations still apply." The call ended before I could respond. That afternoon I stepped outside to find 3 neighbors gathered near the sidewalk. Greg was one of them, his arms folded, smirk plastered across his face. A woman I'd never met before pointed toward my house and said something I couldn't hear. When I walked closer, they scattered like birds. Megan came over later, nervous and pale. "They held a board meeting last night," she whispered. "You weren't invited, but your name came up. They're trying to get the management company to extend their authority to exempt homes." I stared at her. "They can't do that. They're trying anyway." That night I checked Facebook. The group page was on fire. A post from the board read, "Community update. Enforcement efforts will now cover all neighborhood properties." Comments flooded in, cheering them on. Some called it a win for fairness. Others went further, mentioning my address directly. Emily read over my shoulder and slammed the laptop shut. "They're insane," she said. "They're completely out of control." She was right. It had gone far past nuisance. The next morning a certified letter arrived. It was thick, heavy, and stamped "Notice of Assessment." Inside was a breakdown of supposed fees. Thousands of dollars in cumulative fines for noncompliance. My throat went dry as I read it. There was a deadline at the bottom, 10 days to pay or face legal action. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the page. 10 days. That evening I drove past the HOA's office, a small building tucked between a strip mall and a pharmacy. Through the glass I saw Laura inside, talking with 2 other people. One of them looked familiar. The old man from our neighborhood. He was pointing at papers spread across the desk. I parked a few spaces away, watching. When they noticed me, Laura closed the blinds. Something inside me snapped. I got out of the car, marched to the door, and knocked hard. Laura opened it halfway. "You can't just show up here," she said. "I want to know why you're letting this happen," I said. "We're not under your jurisdiction." The old man stepped closer, smirking. "Everyone in this neighborhood plays by the same rules," he said. "You don't get to live differently just because you think you're special." I clenched my fists. "We're exempt. You can't fine us," he leaned forward. "Then move." For a second the room went silent. I felt the heat rise in my face, but there was nothing I could say that wouldn't make it worse. I turned and walked out, every step heavier than the last. When I got home, Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, hands on her face. "They put something on the door again," she said quietly. It was a laminated notice taped directly over our peephole. "Final compliance inspection scheduled." The date was tomorrow. I barely slept. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. Around midnight, headlights swept across the front windows, pausing, then driving off. Morning came slow. I watched the street from the porch, waiting. A white SUV rolled up around 9. 2 people stepped out, clipboards in hand. One of them was Laura, the other was the old man. I didn't go inside, I just stood there watching them pace the yard, scribbling notes, whispering. After 15 minutes they walked to the porch. Laura handed me a form. "Your noncompliance is documented," she said, tone clipped. "Expect an invoice by mail." I didn't take the paper. "You're trespassing," I said. The old man smiled. "Community access rights. Read the fine print." They walked away like they'd won something. I wanted to yell, to chase them down the street, but I knew it would only make me look unstable. Megan called that evening. Her voice was tight. "You should check your mailbox." I walked out to the curb, heart pounding. Inside was a single envelope, unmarked, same typewriter font as the others. I opened it under the porch light. Inside was a single line, typed in red. "Next step is enforcement. You can't hide forever." My hands shook. The wind picked up, carrying a few dead leaves across the yard. For the first time, I didn't feel like a homeowner anymore. I felt hunted, and when I looked up, I saw him again, standing on his porch, staring back. Only this time he was smiling. By the time the last notice arrived, I'd stopped looking at the mailbox. The stack of letters, fines, and warnings was too heavy to lift, too heavy to care about individually. They all blended together into a constant thrum of pressure that followed me wherever I went. Emily stayed quiet most of the time, but I could see the tension in her jaw and the way she avoided walking past certain windows. Even our small backyard had become a source of stress. Every plant, every decoration, every board in the fence was now a potential violation in someone's eyes. I called a lawyer finally, hoping for advice. "You can dispute some of these fines," he said cautiously, "but the board has leverage, and the management company will side with them. You could win small battles, but they'll just escalate everything else." I nodded numbly. Small battles, that was all this had ever been. Each minor victory brought a dozen more fines. Each email I responded to led to another notice. I realized there was no winning, only surviving. Neighbors had started talking openly now in front of us across the street, sometimes while walking their dogs. I could hear the whispers, the subtle laughter, the eyes following me when I stepped outside. Greg from across the street waved once, a sickly grin that didn't reach his eyes. Megan stopped coming by. She said it was too risky. I couldn't blame her. We tried small acts of resistance. We fixed the crooked plank in the fence, repainted the chipped corner of the siding, rearranged the flower bed exactly the way they wanted. It didn't help. A new fine would arrive the next day, accusing us of creating unauthorized visual disruption. There was no end. One afternoon, Emily found another envelope, this one different. It wasn't just a fine. It was a demand for full compliance within 72 hours or legal action will commence. I read it over the kitchen table, and I couldn't stop the rage that surged. I wanted to rip it up, throw it in the street, confront them directly, but I knew better. One confrontation and they'd have the perfect excuse to escalate. Every move had to be calculated. We were trapped in our own home, prisoners of rules that didn't apply, surrounded by neighbors who wanted to watch us squirm. The HOA, the board and the management company had become a single machine. They didn't care about fairness or the spirit of the community, they cared about control. And we were at the mercy of it. Days passed. Emily stopped leaving the house except for work. I stayed late at the office, anything to avoid the quiet of the house, the oppressive feeling that someone was always observing, always judging. Sometimes I would glance at the street, half expecting to see a figure lurking, taking notes. We tried to hold on to normal life. Weekends were spent in silence, no backyard meals, no garden work, no laughter on the porch. Every plan, every small joy, was measured against the fear of some future fine or violation. Then came the inspection day. Laura from the management company arrived with the old man and two others, clipboards in hand, walking through the yard like they owned it. I didn't go outside. Emily didn't move from the living room window. They measured, photographed, scribbled notes, and left without a word. I didn't care about the paper they left behind. It didn't matter. By that evening, our home felt smaller than ever. Every corner, every object, every inch of the yard seemed to belong to someone else. The realization hit me like a cold wave. Our home was no longer ours. It hadn't been for months, maybe years. The neighborhood went back to its routines. Board meetings, Facebook posts, petty squabbles. Life went on outside our walls. Inside we were prisoners. The old man would still post occasionally, always monitoring, always reminding us of the rules. Occasionally a neighbor would pass by, staring for a moment too long, a hint of glee in their eyes. Emily and I stopped fighting about it. There was nothing to fight. Resistance had become pointless. Every small victory invited another punishment. Every complaint led to retaliation. We had learned to survive quietly, to endure. We didn't leave. We couldn't, not yet. The house was ours on paper, but in reality it wasn't. The weight of the fines, the harassment, the constant scrutiny had changed us. Quiet, careful, paranoid. Sometimes I catch myself looking at the fence or the flower bed, imagining whether it's crooked, whether it's enough to trigger another letter. It never stops. The old man's smile from across the street, the surveillance, the board's authority, all of it is a reminder that freedom is an illusion. The letters, the fines, the comments, they'll keep coming. They'll keep testing, pushing, measuring. And we'll keep complying, little piece by little piece, until the rules change again or we break under the pressure. And so life goes on, grim and endless. The neighborhood hums with normalcy outside, but inside we are trapped in the shadow of the HOA, a constant reminder of control we never asked for. We bought a house to feel free, but 6 years later, the walls hold us, the streets watch us, and the people around us remind us that victory in this neighborhood is only ever theirs. We've learned to endure. That's all we can do.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share.